Welcome back to Topic 37 for Algebra 1, Subtracting Polynomials. In this video, we're going to learn how to subtract polynomials by using the horizontal method and the vertical method, and also subtract polynomials when given a word problem. So, in order to subtract polynomials, what we need to specifically subtract is the like terms. But before we do that, we need to use the distributive property. In our example here, we're asked to simplify 4n squared plus 5 minus the quantity negative 2n squared plus 2n minus 4. Now, when we really have a negative sign here, this is really a negative 1. So when I asked you to use the distributive property, it's because we're going to be distributing this negative 1 to every single term in this second quantity. Now, what I like to do is I like to rewrite my expression after I've already applied the distributive property, so I know how my signs have changed. This will change to 4n squared plus 5. Then since we're applying this negative sign, since we've already applied the subtraction, now we're going to combine. So a negative 1 times a negative 2n squared gives us positive 2n squared. Negative 1 times positive 2n is minus 2n. And negative 1 times negative 4 is positive 4. So what I'd like to do also before I go into simplifying is identify my like terms. Like terms, as a reminder, have the same variable raised to the same power, or the same exponent. So we have 4n squared and 2n squared. Then we also have a negative 2n. And then we have positive 5 and positive 4, our constants. Using the horizontal method, I'm going to group these like terms together. So we have 4n squared plus 2n squared plus a negative 2n plus 5 plus 4. 4n squared plus 2n squared gives us 6n squared minus 2n, and 5 plus 4 gives us 9. The vertical method we can use after we already apply this distributive property, after we all multiply the second quantity by a negative 1. So I can line up my like terms and get, let's do color-coded, 4n squared, now I'm going to leave a gap here, plus 5, and then we have 2n squared minus 2n plus 4. Since we already applied, again, that negative 1, we already distributed it, we can just combine our like terms now. 4n squared plus 2n squared gives us 6n squared. Now wherever we see a blank space, really want to sing Blank Space by Taylor Swift right now. That's the same thing as just a 0, so this is really 0n. So we're left with negative 2n when we combine those together, and then 5 plus 4 gives us 9. Now looking at our final answer, as we learned how to do in topic 36, we're going to classify this final polynomial. The highest degree that we see is a 2, so this must be a quadratic. Then we want to count how many terms do we see. 1, 2, 3. Since it's a 3-term polynomial, this is specifically called a trinomial. So our answer is a quadratic trinomial. Now sometimes you may encounter a problem and it's already written vertically. So in this case, we have 4x squared minus 3x plus 5 minus the quantity, again, this is the entire quantity, 3x squared minus x minus 8. So when we're subtracting, we're not just subtracting this 3x squared, we're subtracting every single term in this second line here, in the second row. So we're really distributing this negative to every single term. And when that happens, we're multiplying by a -1. So that actually changes the sign of every term in that second row. So instead of positive 3x squared, we get a negative 3x squared. Instead of a negative x, we get a positive. And instead of a -8, we get a positive 8. Now we can go through and combine our like terms. 4x squared plus a negative 3x squared gets us x squared. Negative 3x plus a positive x gets us negative 2x. And 5 plus a positive 8 gives us 13. And that's it. Now again, let's practice classifying this polynomial. Again, we have a degree of 2 as our highest power. So this is going to be a quadratic. Because we have a degree of 2. And how many terms do we count? 1, 2, 3. This is a 3-term polynomial. So specifically, this is a quadratic trinomial. Let's look at our last example, which happens to be a word problem. 2 bottle rockets are launched straight up into the air. The height in feet of each rocket at t seconds after launch is given by rocket A, which is 122t minus 16, and rocket B, 84t minus 16. We're asked to write an equation to find the difference in height of rocket A and rocket B. What we're first going to do is apply cubes. So we're going to circle any numbers that we see. Then we're going to underline our question, which we're asked to write an equation to find the difference. Then we're going to box any important words. The height in feet, so we know our unit of each rocket after t seconds. T represents our time here. We have specifically rocket A, and we're dealing with rocket B. Oops. Now we're asked to write an equation to find the difference. And difference tells us that we're dealing with subtraction. So, for our equation, we're asked to find the difference in height specifically. And our unit is out of time. So h of t tells us the height after a certain amount of time has passed. And that's by taking the difference of rocket A and subtracting rocket B. Now, since we already know what rocket A and rocket B are, the expressions for them, we can just plug them in. So h of t equals 122t minus 16 minus rocket B, which is 84t minus 16. Here, since we're subtracting, we really have a -1 here that we're going to distribute. So let's multiply that out. H of t is the same thing as 122t minus 16 minus 84t, and -1 times -16 is positive 16. Let's go through and identify our like terms. We have 122t and -84t. Notice how I included the sign with that 84t, -16 and positive 16. So h of t is the same thing as 122t minus 84t, again keeping that sign with it. After we've applied that -1, we can now add, and we have -16 plus 16. Now we can simplify. So h of t is going to equal 122t minus 84t, which gives us 38t. And negative 16 plus 16 adds to 0, so we're just left with our final linear monomial of 38t. Now part B asks us to, after 5 seconds, find the difference in height. So this is really handy why we included our unit of time in seconds. What we're asked to find here is our height after 5 seconds. So we're going to plug in t equals 5. So we have 38 times 5. 38 times 5 as 190. Then, since we're dealing with a word problem, let's write our answer in a complete sentence. So the difference in height will be 190. Now our unit is feet, between the rockets after 5 seconds. And that's it. Thank you for watching topic 37 for Algebra 1, subtracting polynomials.